Hello there, you are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with the columnist at the Daily Mirror, Susie Boniface, and the former Conservative Special Advisor, Anita Boateng. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. The Times reports that as few as 6 patients in 10 could be dealt with by hospital A&E departments within 4 hours this winter, calling it the winter of woe. The Telegraph also leads with a healthcare story, saying that a cyber attack has disrupted the NHS 111 service. The Financial Times' weekend edition writes that Tory leadership candidate Liz Truss is opting for handouts over tax cuts to help households with the cost of living crisis. The Express follows the sad turn in events in the Archie Battersby case. His life support is due to be turned off at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. The Mail says that Transport Secretary Grant Shapps wants to impose tougher prison sentences on cyclists who caused the death of pedestrians. The Mirror focuses on the hosepipe ban facing millions of people in the UK. The Guardian outlines the increasing tensions between China and the US, saying that their relations have deteriorated into further uncertainty. And The Star describes a professor who has successfully tricked people on Twitter into believing that a new planet had been discovered, when it was, in fact, a picture of a slice of chorizo. Looks exactly like a slice of chorizo to me. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Susie Boniface and Anita Boateng. Thank you, ladies, for joining us this evening. Let's start with the Telegraph. And the Telegraph have declared for Liz Truss. They say 6 in 10 readers said the Foreign Secretary should replace Boris Johnson. This they're describing as a fresh blow to Rishi Sunak's campaign. Susie.
Well, it is a fresh blow if the Daily Telegraph readership is indicative of the Tory membership. And there's probably a strong argument for saying that it is, but also that it isn't. So, you know, they've managed to question almost 10,000 of their own readers to ask what they think, and they've come out in favour of Liz. But there's some really interesting stuff buried deep down in the survey as well. It's always the bit right down in the back that actually is the really juicy bits. And considering the fact that Liz Truss has been a little bit anti, shall we say, green levies and things like that help meet net zero, almost half of these Daily Telegraph readers are backing net zero by 2050. And that could be a little bit awkward. It could be even more awkward if they are truly indicative of the Conservative Party membership, because almost half of them want net zero by 2050, but 39%, which is a very sizable minority, don't. And if that is indicative of Conservative voters and Conservative Party membership, how is any leader going to be able to balance a very narrow majority in their support and their base for doing something very radical, and a very big minority in that same base for not doing it at all? That's going to be a massive headache. And further in there, it also says that 2/3 of them don't want her to give a job to Boris Johnson in her cabinet. Now, she's already said that she doesn't think he would want that job. She has offered a job to Rishi, which it doesn't seem like they've questioned her about, at least isn't reported on the front page here. But it's also, that's kind of the opposite of what the Telegraph has been saying elsewhere, claiming that there are thousands and thousands of Tory members who want Boris Johnson to stay in government. So it's a bit swings and roundabouts. It's a case of, I think, suck it and see, really. It's one of those many surveys you get in a leadership election where you can go, well, it might not.
Yeah, and this survey comes amidst the latest top Tory to back Liz Truss. This is Andrea Leadsom, quoted as saying Ms Truss would make sure every baby is given the best start in life, unite the Conservatives and lead a team drawn from across the party. That surely has to be another blow to Rishi Sunak, doesn't it, Anita?
Yes, and I think that honestly, the cabinet and former members of the cabinet see which way the wind is blowing, and very strategically are kind of like if I, put my oar in, everyone is in politics to serve and want to serve at the top table. So I think there is an element of that going on. I think there's other interesting details buried in that piece in the Telegraph that we've just discussed, which is really about some of the things that Liz Truss would do were she to be elected party leader and prime minister. One of them speaks of the emergency budget that she plans to bring in, which would, pause the green levy. So these are some of the additional things that are put onto energy bills, basically levied by the energy companies that go towards investment in renewable energy. She talks about reversing that corporation tax hike, which wasn't due to come in immediately, but nevertheless would be quite a big thing for business. And also, and this is the big one, the national insurance increase, which was introduced by the then Chancellor Rishi Sunak to pay for the NHS and social care uplift in spending, that she would reverse that immediately. And that is some really interesting and quite bold moves that shows that she's absolutely not resigning from her tax cutting agenda, even as the tales from the Bank of England and the reports that we had yesterday about, astonishing levels of inflation and also of prolonged recession. They're predicting, 5 quarters of recession for the next year and a half. So things are going to get very bumpy indeed. And the questions about how you balance inflation with tax cuts, will they be inflationary in this instance? All of that is yet to play for. But Truss is clearly, if she wins, going to go full steam ahead with her proposals.
OK, before we move on, Anita, as a former Conservative special advisor, are you at liberty to say who you are backing?
You know what? I haven't got my ballot paper yet. And I'm not sort of declaring. I don't know really why. I think I've got to the point where I've made my mind up, but I haven't publicly said. So
would you like to? Would you like to? Would you like to?
Keep everyone guessing.
Interesting. Susie, right, let's move on. Staying with Liz Truss, though, in the front of the FT, she's insisting on tax cuts, it's saying, instead of handouts to help households.
Yeah, and one of the phrases that she uses in this interview is that she's criticising the Treasury's what she calls abacus economics. Abacus, anyone who doesn't remember primary school, it's the little thing with beads on that you use to sort of click sums up and down. It's sort of partly how civilization began counting thousands of years ago, and it's still of some use now.
I wonder if they're still sold, actually. That just makes me think. I don't think I've seen an abacus for years.
Who knows? We might need one if we all end up having to sort of, live on the black market, as it were. But, she's saying, I don't want to... it's just the Treasury and their abacus economics. It's like saying, oh, well, they're just using maths. You can prove anything with maths. Of course they're using... An abacus is counting and subtraction. It's pretty basic maths. That's a good thing, I thought. But what we're talking about here, sort of fundamentally, she's talking about making big tax cuts, as Anita suggested, whether or not that would have an inflationary impact. Now, all the independent economic experts, most of them, I should say not all, but most of those that have been in the media and so on being interviewed, who aren't affiliated to one side or the other, are saying, look, if you make tax cuts, that is going to embed inflation. In the higher prices will just be there forever. If you do give what she would call a handout, which is one way of describing giving taxpayers money back to the taxpayers, it's our cash, remember, it's not a handout, it's the same as a tax cut, really. They're all handouts, aren't they? If you give a handout, as it were, to deal with something like the cost of fuel and energy, then that would actually cost fewer billions and have less of an inflationary impact, although there would still be one, perhaps in the short term. So Truss's plans, apparently, they say it doesn't even cover the rise in energy bills that we now look like we're facing, which are going to rise every 3 months rather than every 6 months. And she plainly hasn't had her energy bill through yet and hasn't quite perhaps done the sums on her own abacus at home. And of course, if the Bank of England is right in what, as Anita was saying there, what they were saying about predicting a recession, then Liz doesn't have the fiscal headroom which she claims to have, i.e. the space, the savings, if you like, in the bank account, to actually make any of these cuts. So although Anita's saying, well, she's plenty going to follow through with all this. Yes, she's very, very definite about it. But I do think when she gets into government, and the same would go for Rishi to some extent, the things they have said to their membership in order to get elected are things that are not necessarily going to be workable on days 1 to 574, however many it's going to be, of actually being in government.
It was ever thus. We must leave it there for the moment and take a break, Anita and Susie. When we continue with the press preview, this story we'll be looking at in the Mail. Their headline, reckless cyclists face jail crackdown. Do stay with us for much more.
Action.
Ben Stokes' New England are rewriting Test cricket.
Express yourself.
It's a record chase for England in Test cricket. Back-to-back hundreds.
As the batsmen cut loose.
Magnificent. Savour it. He is special. Bang.
I don't know what Bez is, but I know what baseball is.
But can South Africa outrun them?
That is monumental.
Or will England hit even greater heights?
This is pure carnage.
England v South Africa, the first test, Wednesday the 17th of August. To add Sky Sports, go to sky.com/sports.
I have decided to name a new heir. I'm your heir. Dragons. A power man should never have trifled with. War is afoot.
Knives will come out.
Now they see you as you are.
Here comes a question. What's special about the HP Pavilion? It's got Windows 11, says Rita, and a touchscreen lets you tap, zoom, snap, and swipe. So that'd be good for teaching my art class. I'll find out, she says. Oh, Paris. Because like all Curry's experts, Rita here leaves no question unanswered. So she knows when she says, yes, it's very good. The touchscreen makes everything easier. And she knows it's interest-free from just $17.87 a month for 24 months at Curry's.
Tesco Finest Ultimate Brisket and Chuck Burgers. Made with succulent cuts of prime Aberdeen Angus beef. Now just £2.50 with your Tesco Club card or app.
Anna stayed at this hotel and paid this price. Laura stayed at the same hotel and paid a lot less. How? Well, Anna found the hotel on her usual website. Laura, on the other hand, used Trivago to compare offers from major booking sites and found a great deal. Hotel Trivago.
Flames setting fire to your skin? It's burning. It could be a symptom of thrush. Treat the symptoms and the cause and get complete relief with Caniston Thrush Combi. Say it as it is to treat it as it is.
Right now at Wren, you can get 50% off kitchen units and up to 5 years interest-free credit. Plus, you can lock in the price of your new kitchen for 18 months with a fully refundable 10% deposit. The Wren Inflation Stopping Sale, now on.
Ready, set, summer with Jet2 Holidays. Now's the time to get away, so come on. Discover amazing sunny destinations with 4- and 5-star hotels and 22 kilograms of baggage included. Don't miss out. Book now. Jet2 Holidays. Package holidays you can trust. After NATO protected.
Fast delivery. Unmissable TV. All included with Prime.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview. Still with me, the columnist at the Daily Mirror, Susie Boniface, and the former Conservative Special Advisor, Anita Boateng. Welcome back to both of you. Let's have a look at the Mail front page. And this is a story regarding reckless cyclists, and Grant Shapps is wanting to make changes to the law, Anita.
Yes, I mean, actually, this story, this issue of death by dangerous cycling has been around for quite a long time, at least 4 years. Certainly when I was in government, this was a topic of conversation. But basically, Grant Shapps is now confirming that government is going to go ahead with measures that effectively change a slightly archaic rule that means it's quite hard. Basically, if you cause a death by dangerous cycling, which happens very rarely, but does happen, you end up getting up to 18 months in jail. And obviously, the sentence for death by dangerous driving is up to 10 years, I believe. So it's about addressing that discrepancy, which I think, could be a welcome step in making sure that in those rare instances, there is a way to make sure that people, are held accountable for dangerous cycling. But I think the broader thing that the DFT is doing around making roads safer for pedestrians and cyclists and cars are the things that are going to deliver the material improvements that we all want to see.
Susie, do you think that that's fair, that reckless cyclists are treated exactly the same as dangerous drivers?
Well, the number of deaths are only 1% of what's caused on the roads by cars, but it's absolutely right that they should, and the victims of those kind of crimes should have the justice and everything else that they're entitled to. But I feel about 1,000 years old. Am I the only person here who ever did a cycling proficiency test? Because when I came through primary school, all the kids, if you wanted to ride your bike to school, you had to do the course, you had to do the highway code, yes. And that was where you learned, how to turn left and turn right and everything else.
I think Anita's done it because she's nodding. Have you?
How many cyclists today have you ever seen with a bell on their bike and who actually use it to warn people that they're there? It's kind of, what the highway code and how to behave on the roads as a cyclist is something that you should have to learn or be taught, not just something that you have to pick up as you go along, because there are children who go out riding their bikes with their parents at the weekends, some of whose parents teach them well, some of whom go out by themselves, and you're just learning sort of by guesswork. We wouldn't let people drive a car or a lorry or a tank with guesswork and trying to work it out for themselves. You give them a bit of training to start with, and it just makes perfect sense to me as both a cyclist and a motorist that we just make sure that everyone who goes out on the roads driving a piece of metal at some speed and capable of causing death or injury just has the basic training. Cycling proficiency. Why isn't the Transport Secretary talking about the cycling proficiency test?
I hope he's listening. You've got that off your chest. But also the rules have changed, haven't they? Because cyclists, the rules in terms of how far they cycle from the curb, that's changed. And drivers also need to know for their own safety what the cycling rules are. Let's have a look at the Mirror. Anita, take us into this. I'll just read the headline. Dust Bowl UK, and the picture speaks for itself, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Well, not only is the scorcher continuing, we believe it's going to get worse, and hosepipe bans are coming in, or have come in on the southeast part of the country. So there's going to be a lot of, curtain twitching from neighbours, checking to see suspiciously green lawns throughout the summer. And the advice from Thames Water, I got an email earlier saying, well, basically, let your lawn go dry. This is what you've got to do to preserve water. And I think that it's going to be one of many challenges that we're going to see this year. The only thing we can hope is that everyone acts responsibly, because we really have to make sure that we are conserving where we can.
A little bit uncomfortable, this sort of ratting on your neighbour, though, isn't it, Susie?
I wouldn't do it.
Well, yes, I think there are probably some better solutions. I mean, first off, the picture on the front of the Mirror there about the source of the Thames being dry. I've walked the length of the Thames and been at the source, and it's dry every summer, right at the top there. But it's the case of how far down from the source that it remains dry. Is it a mile, half a mile, 6 miles from the source that it's still dry? Who knows? But in terms of actually being personally responsible, why isn't every homeowner being advised to have a water butt, or perhaps help to do so? Why isn't every new house being built with water butts and underground water butts and grey water saving devices and rooftop storage tanks? Why are water companies being allowed to drill into aquifers and empty the underground water sources so we don't have sources of supply during dry periods?
Lots of questions.
Why, when we have so many billions of pounds and private companies running our system, do we not have a pipeline from areas of the country that have lots of rain to areas of the country with less rain?
Lots of whys. I have none of the answers, but very good questions, Susie and Anita. Thank you very much for taking us through the papers. See you a little later.